Yalimadat, we hope you're all well and keeping safe. As part of the Economic Planning Board for Kenya, we are hosting a variety of leading experts to assist our Jamaat with a few of the critical questions that are going through our minds during such a crisis. Today's topic covers the contractual obligations that we have as landlords, tenants, as well as if we have any projects under construction. Welcome. We are joined today by Nafisa Teja, Zahiba Mauji, as well as Simon Kariba. Nafisa and Zahiba are both part of the Pam Golding Properties Kenya operation, which is one of the leading property management firms in Africa. Nafisa is a commercial property consultant and she specializes in sales and leasing, working with landlords, tenants, as well as corporate clients. Zahiba provides property management solutions for residential, commercial, as well as rental developments. Her key areas of expertise include lease and contract negotiations, marketing and communications, as well as investor relations. Simon represents Bowman Kenya. Bowman's Kenya is a leading corporate and commercial law firm providing legal advice as well as transaction services to a wide range of international and local clients. The Bowman's team have experience drawn from both the public and private sector in Kenya, the UK, as well as Australia. Simon is a senior associate in the real estate and construction team at Bowman's. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and has a vast experience in the industry. So firstly, we would like to start talking about the current market scenario plus effects of the COVID-19 on the sector. And Nafisa, would you like to take this on?
Sure, thanks Raheem. Yalimadat everyone. Just to give you a brief snapshot of the current market scenario with the COVID environment. We see a lot of closures of shops and stores. Opening hours have been regulated and business incomes have dropped. Many are having challenges paying rent, office or shop rent, and the salaries as well. Companies are laying off workers. There are lowered income streams. Many are having challenges paying home rent or even school fees. Another insight into this market is that people will likely need to liquidate assets for some cash flow soon. So many properties will be coming into the market and likely driving the prices even lower and increasing the already high supply in the property market. So this may mean more choices for tenants who are looking to downgrade. However, it's very important for landlords right now to start thinking about their pricing in order to make and keep their properties competitive for a quick update in this new COVID market. Zahiba, do you have anything to add on the residential component?
Thank you, Nafisa and Yalimadat. Yes, residents are spending more and more time at home and getting involved in a lot more household activities. There's also a likelihood of increased common area space usage, such as the gym facilities or the garden facilities. Hence, depending on the type of property that you are residing in, there should be some guidelines in place in relation to the operations of that property. For example, the additional measures on safety and hygiene. I mean, the basic COVID-19 containment area is on hygiene, and so one must look at enhancing these measures within the property. One of the things we've done is, for example, we've placed dispensers all over. We've also provided water and soap for the guards, for the cleaners. Another example is additional measures towards security. So we've all sort of heard what's happening in Nairobi right now. With more people getting laid off work, there is a high possibility of increased risk in security. So, you know, landlords, property managers, and tenants all together need to look at how they're enhancing some of these security measures. Ordinarily, the tenant is fully responsible for their unit, whilst the landlord and the property manager is responsible for the common area. Raheem, over to you.
Thank you, Nafisa and Zahiba. Simon, the term force majeure has all of a sudden come to fore. What is force majeure and how does it come into play in the landlord-tenant relationship under these COVID-19 times?
Thank you very much, Raheem, and thank you everyone for your participation in this webinar. Indeed, it is true that force majeure has come to the fore in these COVID-19 times. And what force majeure simply is, it's a legal concept. Force majeure is in French, which in English would mean exceptional circumstances or exceptional events. Generally speaking, a force majeure event is one that relates or prevents a party from performing their contractual obligations. It is important to stress that force majeure is only applicable if it is provided for in your contract, in this case, in your lease document or in your agreement to lease document. Some leases specifically provide for what force majeure event will be. So there's going to be a definition of a force majeure, of what force majeure is generally. And then they will go ahead and expressly say that if these 5 events arise, then these would be deemed to be force majeure for purposes of our relationship. In some of those leases, a tenant's inability to pay rent sometimes that may constitute a force majeure event. However, please remember that depends on what the lease says. In some leases provide for rent rebates in case of a force majeure event, or in what sometimes is called a material adverse effect. So if your lease is one of those that provides for rent rebates, then you may need to look at your lease and implement it as such. For leases that do not have force majeure provisions or do not have provisions like material adverse events, then force majeure may not apply. However, there are some other legal doctrines like the doctrine of frustration, which is applicable to all contracts. However, frustration comes in as a final act, which comes in to terminate contractual obligations at a tail end. And you have to prove frustration, and the burden of proving frustration is extremely high. We may be hesitant to say that there is frustration yet based on what is happening right now. Over to you, Rahim.
Thank you, Simon. So we heard what to expect from a tenant's perspective. Nafisa, what do we in turn expect from landlords?
Sorry, I think maybe Zahiba, if you don't mind, I'd like Zahiba to start off with talking about the tenant situation from a residential point of view. Zahiba,
Sure.
would you like to start off on that one?
Yes, absolutely. So for this question, I would like to split the type of resident in the following categories. The first one are those who own the residential property and have no financial obligation towards any type of payment. The second are those who have purchased property through a loan and need to facilitate for this loan. So if you fall under this particular category, you should have already started the conversation with the bank, so whichever financial institution, on moratoriums or any other cushion-proof facilities with that institution. Ensure that your cover is through an adequate period, because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last for. The third category is those that are paying rent. Now, what is your stand as you're paying the rent? Have you looked at your current cash flow? So these are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. And if you are having trouble paying your rent, then one of the things that you can consider is move into a smaller space. Another option is move in with an extended family where you're actually not paying the rent and you're splitting probably the cost of operation of residing there. Again, I would like to emphasize that those that are paying rent need to look at their cash flow. It's very simple. Look at how much you're earning. Look at how much you're earning as a family. How much are you spending? Are there any other areas that you can reduce your cost on? For example, if you're using if you're using several equipment within the house and those are consuming a lot of power, can you reduce on those? switch off the lights when you're not using them. This eventually does have an impact on the final utility bill. And try and do this for every line item that you can come across within that cash flow. That will give you a realistic position of where you stand. Now, once you have that information and you're still not able to pay the rent, approach your landlord, discuss that with him, show him your supporting documents, whether it's your bank statements or if you show him whatever other supportive documents that you might have. Explain to the landlord just what your position is. If in most of the cases, if you are a tenant who has been very efficient in paying the rent, most landlords are going to hear you out. But ensure that you're taking genuine proposals to your landlord and not a machine gun approach. Over to you, Nafisa.
Thanks, Sahiba. And I just want to say that for commercial tenants, the same applies too. Work on your cash flows, look at your P&Ls, approach your landlord. But having said this all, while your landlord may use compassion to judge a request of rental relief, they're not legally obligated to grant your request. So keep in mind that you are in a legal contract with your landlord, and any decision to alter the nature of your lease terms or agreement, it has to be done, it has to be mutually agreed, and it should be in writing. So when writing to your landlord, suggest a payment plan, take into consideration their circumstances as well. Landlords have debts as well. So, what we're basically be if your requests come in a good format, they will be more willing to consider it. Over to you, Rahim. Sorry, Rahim, you're just on mute.
Thanks, Nafisa. So shifting the gears slightly to projects under construction, how is the COVID-19 affecting the contractual responsibilities there? How would force majeure apply to such projects under construction? Simon, can you shed some light on that?
Okay, thank you very much, Rahim. So if you're a contractor or a developer, an employer or a consultant, then this question is important to you. And what is coming out of construction sites based on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic is that some construction sites are seeing shorter work days. There are fewer workers on site because of the social distancing rules and the applications to that effect. Sometimes it's a problem to have, sometimes the supply of materials is also problematic, even though I have to stress here, it will depend on a contract by contract basis. Some projects on a project by project basis. Some projects are not affected by one or the other, some are affected by all of them. And and in such situations, then you may speak of some extraneous circumstances or exceptional circumstances that may make you start thinking of force majeure provisions. And unlike in leases, most construction contracts are ordinarily standard form contracts. And what we have in Kenya is usually either FIDIC contracts or the joint building green book agreements. And those two main standard form contracts provide for force majeure. And in such circumstances, they will speak about the risk allocation. They will speak about the risk allocation of the various parties. Ordinarily, the risk is usually centered on the developer. However, those contracts, there are some nuances here and there that shifts the risk to the contractor. So some guidance to that effect is very, very important. If your construction contract does not have force majeure provisions, then just like leases, there is a final act of frustration. But just as mentioned in leases, that is not your first point of call. And then when you're managing your project, you may consider things like suspension, postponement, And a termination is also an option. However, it is important to work as a team together with the consultants to mitigate all the losses and have an open book approach for all parties and be collaborative, regardless of what your contractual rights are or what your contractual obligations are. I think that these times call for parties to look for a common solution. And just to, as a concluding point is, and this will apply also to leases, remember that there's going to be life after COVID-19, and then life after COVID-19, some parties may not have resolved their disputes, and there may be need for dispute resolution 15, 16, 18 months from today. It is important, whatever it is that you agree upon today, that you maintain proper documentation so that 18 months from today, it's not a question of he said, I said, it's properly and well documented. Thank you very much, and back to you, Rahim.
Thank you, Simon. So we heard what to expect from a tenant's perspective. And Nafisa, what do we in turn expect from landlords?
Thanks, Rahim. For landlords, in this COVID time, we all know that remote working is encouraged for all industries, whether, remote learning is encouraged for all industries, wherever possible. Office facilities are not being used as much. Shops are not meeting their sales targets. Your tenants will likely have lowered income streams, and rent will be challenging for them to meet. So expect your tenants to approach you for rental relief. Now, before even considering these, first and foremost, you must take into consideration on a case-by-case basis. Some of the things you should consider are the lease period. Is this tenant on a full commercial lease, a 5-year, 3-month lease where there is no exit clause, and/or is this tenant on a license agreement where you can sometimes invoke a 3-month notice clause? Ensure the tenants are paying their full service charge. The building or your asset, it needs to be maintained either way. Work on a P&L of accounts to understand the current scenario in order to adjust the results for the future. And preempt the tenants that may want that meeting and work out the possible scenarios, the leeway that you can offer them before they have this meeting with you. Now, if you're paying a bank loan, discussions with the bank loan should be ongoing, and try and look out for a longer term, even maybe more than 3 months, because this scenario will take some time, and recovery will take an even longer time. So take that into consideration. If you have a really good tenant, consider the requests keenly. Enhance other management measures where tenants feel safe and secure, and work together with your tenants. This is a community of burden. These times are difficult, and everyone's challenges should be considered fairly. And be genuine towards the tenant. If you can give them a concession, say so, and if you can't, be very honest with them. But both parties should have the respect and understanding for each other. This is key. When it does come to negotiating for landlords, there are certain negotiating tools that you can consider. And of course, as I say again, these should be considered on a case-to-case basis. So number one, you could consider deferred rent payments. You could ask them to don't pay rent this month or this quarter, pay the rent next quarter. But keep in mind that next quarter, that tenant will be paying double rent, and they should understand that. You can do rent discounts, pay less for a certain period of time, offer them a 20% or whatever percentage discount for the next quarter or for the next 3 months or for the next 2 months. Look at it on a case-by-case basis. Rent holidays, this is a very contentious one, but sometimes it's needed. Especially for retail, you may consider, if not discounts, rent holidays. Okay, we will allow you not to pay rent for this month, but next month you have to continue paying rent as is. If you have new tenants, for example, with a lot of closure of government offices and permits needing to be approved, you can consider, instead of offering them a two-month fit-out period, offer them a 3-month, an extra month fit-out period, and allow them to have that extra month to do their fit-outs. The last suggestion we would like to say is profit share, and this is really for retail. It's a very complicated formula, so you need to sit down and go through all the details with your tenant if you are going to consider a profit sharing negotiation moving forward. So, ensure your tenant understands service charge cannot be compromised. Your building facilities, your security, your cleanliness, your hygiene has to be maintained. Service charge is not negotiable. Parking bays, however, in commercial buildings, it can be looked at as either the last or even the first option. Parking bays can go for some 10,000 shillings per bay per month. And even just that little bit of relief for a parking bay or 2 parking bays for your tenants, it can make a big difference. So consider those options, but again, on a case-by-case basis, and it's really important to do that. Simon or Zahiba, I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to add to that?
No, Nafisa, I think you've captured it. It works quite similarly with residential properties as well. Of course, with the residential properties, the lease tenure may be a bit shorter compared to the commercial properties. There might be, there might be some sort of concessions that landlords can give their residential tenants, but the basic principle remains. Simon?
I agree in entirety. The only thing that I would add is that whatever it is that you agree, please put it in writing. We
Correct.
cannot emphasize that. We cannot overemphasize that. Back to you, Rahim.
Yeah, thank you.
Rahim.
Thanks, Simon. Very insightful. There's a lot of information going around in the media and social media, and our lease contractual terms, are they still being upheld? Is there any governmental action that says that that they shouldn't be upheld in any way?
Absolutely. Contractual terms, leases, construction contracts, all kinds of contracts are still, they are still being upheld, they are still being implemented. There is no governmental order or legislation that says that contractual terms are not to be upheld or suspended. There was an attempt that went to Parliament to have force majeure applied to all contracts in the country, whether they had force majeure provisions or not. And there was also one that required that no landlord can be able to evict a tenant simply because of failure of the tenant's compliance of their lease obligations. However, those proposals never saw the light of day. They were discussed in Parliament, and Parliament decided not to adopt the proposals. The bill that was finally passed and assented to by the President late last week did not have such provisions. So the state of affairs from a legal point of view is that contractual obligations are still being enforced, and should be complied with as much as is practically possible. I don't know whether Nafisa, you have something to add to that?
Thanks, Simon. Yes, exactly what you're saying. Contracts are still enforceable. Any decision to stop paying your rent without prior consultation with landlords, it will result in punitive measures and can have negative consequences even in the long run. So if you cannot meet your rental obligations, you must write or get in touch with your landlord right away. Start that dialogue to mitigate any inability to meet those contractual obligations. And keep in mind that any amendments to the contract, under the lease or the tenancy agreement, it has to be done, of course, mutually agreed by both parties, but it should be done in writing, as Simon's saying. Like, we cannot emphasize the importance of having those in writing. I think that's all. Rahim, over to you.
Thank you. That's very insightful, and relationships are actually key during this moment. Zahiba, so what is the role of property managers such as Pam Golding in assisting clients in the real estate sector in these COVID-19 times?
So, Rahim, as real estate agents, our first and foremost role is one of an advisory one. And whether you're looking at selling your property, you're looking at buying a property, you're looking at leasing, the first point of contact with Pam Golding will be from an advisory point, where we would guide you on the process. We would be able to guide you on what the current market rates are. We would be able to guide you on, the guidelines and the laws and just whatever is happening in the current situation. But at the same time, we would also assist with the actual transaction as well. Now, apart from that, we are property managers as well, and we take care of properties on a day-to-day basis. We look after the normal housekeeping operation, but we also look at placing different strategies in place at different points in time. So right now, our focus is heavily on this COVID pandemic, and not only are we looking at having these safety and hygiene measures on site, but we're looking at what is happening on the security front. How many people should there be on the site from a staffing point of view at any one time? Are we training the personnel on the site? Yes, we are. We're consistently training them. And so these are the type of services that we would be able to provide for the market.
Yeah, thanks. Simon, from your perspective from Bowman's, what is the role of lawyers such as yourself in assisting clients in the real estate and construction sector during these times?
Thank you. I think I see five different or areas of assistance that we can assist clients on. Number one, there is a contractual negotiation and drafting. It is important if you're entering into new leases, if you're entering into new construction projects, to have the guidance of a lawyer so that you can look at these unprecedented times and have the correct wording in your document. Number two is general advisory, and that would help you to appreciate the risks that you're carrying or the risk that the other party is carrying, and sort of like just coming up with mitigation measures and trying to forecast where is this headed, how can we mitigate what is coming tomorrow. We can also assist in restructuring of contractual arrangements so that if, say, for instance, parties sit and they decide the vehicle that has brought us to this point cannot be able to take us through COVID-19 murky waters, then we are able to assist in such situations. And then number four, we are able to assist in dispute management. Dispute management is you anticipate that something is going to be contentious in future, or it's already contentious, there's already a dispute, a legal dispute, so to say, and you go to a lawyer so that you don't make mistakes that will cost you, contracts. Have a lawyer look at your termination, because you may think that you have rights of termination. You end up not having such rights. You are the one who was infringed upon at the beginning, but you end up paying. So it's important to have the guidance from a legal point of view. And eventually, finally, we also assist in dispute resolution as and when that comes. Thank you very much, and back to you, Rahim.
Thank you very much, Simon. I think during such a crisis, the key points that I've gathered is that this is a human-to-human call. We all need to be realistic and genuine about our situations. We can't take advantage of what's happening to get a reduction in rent or any other benefit. We're all in this together. It's about weighing the current weaknesses and actioning towards all the long-term threats that we anticipate. Rent is not the only cost in your personal cash flows. We all need to look at every aspect in a holistic manner and be as prudent as we can during such a crisis. I thank you all for your time that you've actually committed for the community, and we hope that our Jamaat will have most of the questions answered. And I speak for all. I believe that we're all available for any questions that anyone may have, and they can be put in through via the EPB portals or directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rahim.
Thank you very much, Raheem. And yes, please feel free to reach out if you need any advisory services. We are here to help guide you through the right way.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Yali Madad.
Thank you.